Welcome to Scorched Earth and a general mid-month reading for the sign of Libra, Sun, Moon or Ascendant for the last 2 weeks of March. I hope you are well. These readings are shorter than the main monthly readings because they're only covering that 2-week period, and I do structure them differently. So in this one, what I will do is pull 3 cards for your current energy. 3 cards then for the lesson. You know, what is the energy that you're in at the moment trying to teach you? What is it laying the groundwork for, you know? Because I think when things are difficult, it's much easier to navigate challenging circumstances by trying to see why it's happening. So if that doesn't make sense, bear with me, because I'm sure it will do by the end of the reading. And we'll close it out by getting some cards of advice. So, can I have current energy for Libra, please? Goodness, what a shit show of cards. Very first card is death. Oh. Yeah. Second card and third card are the 4 of Swords and the 6 of Pentacles in reverse. And it's interesting that that came up because while I was in the pre-meditation before I started the reading, I actually just found myself swaying from side to side, and it was like the scales kind of tipping up and down like that. It felt unbalanced, like I was trying to find my center, but it wasn't happening, you know? Give me one more card. We have the Justice card. I almost don't feel like I need to go any further in that. We've got the Magician at the bottom of the deck, and I like that for you, particularly with Temperance. And we've got the 7 of Pentacles, because it does speak to me not only of a level of hope that you are experiencing at the moment, but this pursuit of the balance. Now, in order for you to be looking to balance yourself, it's a natural corollary that then you're not feeling quite balanced, and that perhaps there is something external to you that is causing that imbalance in some way. But I'm buoyed up by the presence of the Magician, because whatever it is that's weighing you down, and we've got the 7 of Pentacles here, there is something about where you find yourself now that is not to your liking. You know, it's not bearing the fruit that you wanted to. There is a pursuit, you know, an application of the intellect, of the will, to fixing this solution, and I think that's really important. So your current energy as we find it at the moment is Death card. Now, it's the card of Scorpio in the major arcana, and it talks about transformation, it talks about change, and that would certainly be something that would lead a Libra to be feeling slightly unbalanced, right? There's something going on around you. Oh, do I want to dig in to see what it is? I try not to pull any clarifiers for this, but you know, there's definitely a sense of things changing, and it could be that as it is at the moment you perceive it as an ending, but it never is, right? It's always about a new beginning being phased in some way or another. I never see it as an abrupt cessation of something. Death card. Whoa. We've got Judgment and we've got the 8 of Cups. Oh, and we've got the 6 of Swords at the bottom of the deck. Like, something is changing. Something needs to be left behind. And it could be that you're applying your judgment to this situation and deciding that things need to change, things need to shift, which would certainly imply a good reason for the Magician being in there, because it is in some ways something that you are bringing to bear here, rather than big external forces kind of acting upon you at this time. But there's definitely a sense of movement away from things that you have previously emotionally invested in, and maybe off in a direction where you're not quite sure where you're going to end up, but it doesn't really matter because you headed off anyway, right? It's funny, I just did the reading for Leo, and there was a notion of having outgrown something, and that possibly is what's going on here too. But because we've got the 6 of Swords, swords being, you know, communication and that sort of thing, it feels like you're leaving behind something. And I know that we've touched on a couple of times recently, Libra, this kind of, I think I expressed it as kind of swerving close to something dark and pulling yourself back from it, right? This feels like the processing of that, right? You really bringing your judgment to bear on it and dealing with it emotionally, and leaving it where it needs to be, right? You're walking away from this. Now, don't think that this is, you know, quite as easy as that sounds, because we've got the Four of Swords, which talks about, you know, withdrawing and pulling back a little bit. It is for me a card of rest. Sometimes it's a card of peace, you know, but it is often a card of contemplation, like really reflecting on things. And often the withdrawal that comes from a lot of mental energy going on with you at the time, you know, you kind of pull back from people a little bit, let all these things settle. But this Six of Pentacles in reverse, which is a lower echo of the Justice card for me, we've got those scales on there where it talks about reciprocity as well as balance. And it could be that you're contemplating those relationships that you've had where there isn't a sense of reciprocity. But for me, for the most of you, it feels like you're dealing with things that are changing and shifting around you. And there is this sense of looking for the center, right? Almost working out where it is that you sit in the middle of this, because that pendulum is swinging. That's exactly how it felt. Like pendulum swinging from side to side, or scales just going up and down, up and down, up and down. You know, and if you don't quite know where you stand on something, then you will flip-flop from side to side. Now, the last card that you've got is the Justice card, and I like this because this is you, Libra, and this is a really authentic expression of your energy showing up in the reading. It's another reason why I feel like you are bringing your will to bear on this. But again, the Justice card is all about maintaining that equilibrium no matter what is going on around you and outside of you. It doesn't feel like a particularly pleasant energy to be in, but at the same time, it doesn't feel like it's going to knock you off your perch. It's kind of like you sit with it for a little bit and you feel yourself going that way, and then you kind of are like, but what about these things? And you kind of pulled this way too. And it's just a very even, it's actually more like a metronome actually, now I'm thinking about it, because it's just, it's holding its momentum at the moment. Don't really know where you stand, but you will get there. Whoa, you absolutely will get there, because what we've got here is the Nine of Wands. We've got the Chariot and the Two of Pentacles together, and I like this. And then we've got the Eight of Pentacles. Now, this is the lesson, right? What is the lesson that we are being taught here by the energy that we find ourselves in, right? That looking for that stability, looking for that point of equilibrium. Well, we have the Nine of Wands. This talks about often boundaries. It can also talk about a need to push and fight a little bit harder than one is actually comfortable with doing in order to do something. But I don't really get a sense of that for you here, Libra, because it's because it feels more reflective. It feels more like an assessment of things, and you know, you're bringing your very sharp mental energy to this. And so perhaps it is just a simple case of boundaries, right? Maybe somebody has been taking the piss, and what it is that you've been swinging backwards and forwards about is whether you are overreacting about this situation, or whether, you know, whether you actually do have a point, in which case putting up firm boundaries against somebody who leaves you feeling in that position can be a very valuable lesson indeed, because we move then straight on to the Two of Pentacles and the Chariot. Now, the Chariot is the card of Cancer in the Major Arcana, but it's the card that's all to do with the self for me. And it's interesting, I'm just like tying it in with the Leo reading as well, because it seems to be that the message here is you know, it's about you, Libra. What do you want? What feels right with you? What sits properly with you? What do you stand for? You know, all of these things are implied here by the by the Chariot, which is numbered 7. But we also have this Two of Pentacles, and this is quite interesting, because the Pentacles for me, they can sometimes talk about money, and we can sometimes be talking about juggling money. But for me, it's energetic currency. Like literally anything that you invest in is a pentacle, right? Or anything that you can invest, rather. So that can be your money, it can be your time, your care, your effort, your energy at all, in anything, right? That's pentacle energy to me. And a card number 2 always speaks about the internal. So we've got you kind of balancing your energies about things, but I don't feel like it's like it was before, where you were, like I said, kind of like sailing pretty close to something dark. This is kind of looking at other people and maybe your interactions and your relationships with other people and going, where does this sit with me? You know, it could be that you are being required to walk away from a situation or a relationship or something that you've actually put quite a lot of emotional investment into. This feels to me like this internal sifting, which is what I always see the Queen of Swords, which is the Libra card, as doing. Like, she's a sifter of information. And the reason that it's a metronome effect that we've got going on, where it's an absolutely equal swing each way and it's not losing momentum, is because you are spending all your time sifting this. But somewhere you're about to find your middle, you're about to find where you are, what you stand for, what your identity is, what sits right with you, what doesn't sit right with you. You know, however it applies, it's coming. And then we've got the Eight of Pentacles. Now the Eight of Pentacles is all about work. It's all about working away diligently at something until you achieve a level of mastery. And it's often done in the light of other people being a little less, a little more feckless with the way that they spend their time. But there's a real diligence about the process that you're in at the moment. And it could be to do with work. We could absolutely see it to be that way. But it feels like there's a broader message going on here, whether it applies to your work or your relationships or just a situation that you're in at all. There's something quite valuable here for you to mine once you get to the point where the pendulum stops swinging. And in order for you to stop the pendulum swinging, I think you have to consider fewer points of view, if that makes sense. Because I think it's other people that's making you swing from one side to the other. And actually you need to stop. Consider the effect that whatever this is doing is having on you, rather than trying to see everything from everybody's perspective, right? Well, where does this sit with you? Where does this challenge your values? Where does this make you feel out of alignment, right? Because that's where your answers are. That's what will stop the pendulum from swinging. At the end of the day, you can't control other people, and neither should we really want to. But we kind of forget that we can control ourselves sometimes. And I think it feels a little bit like that's where you are at the moment, Libra. Let's get you some cards of advice. Good God. Yeah, see. Very first card is the Queen of Swords, right? The sifting is important. Very important. Cards flying out everywhere. Yeah, but ultimately it's about you considering what is right for you. We've got the Nine of Pentacles at the bottom of the deck. All 9 cards talk about the individual for me, right? Where are your boundaries? What makes you feel safe? What is good, management of your energetic resources for you? Not about other people, for you. And whether that's money or anything like it, apply it across the board. For some of you, it will absolutely be, maybe you're bailing out family members right, left and centre financially because they need it, but actually you need it too, and now you don't feel like you can say no because you kind of walk down this road here. Like, you can always say no. It's not miserly at this point because your safety is kind of compromised at this point, but maybe it's something else. Maybe it's your time or your care or your effort, or just your general energy levels. Bring it back to you. Start being more discerning about the effect that it's having on you. And then we've got this interesting card here. We've got the Five of Cups in reverse. Now that way around, it talks about bereavement, grief, loss, but it also talks of being stuck in an energy of focusing on what you have lost, right? This crow does not notice that there are 2 cups behind him that still contain, the water that has fallen out in the other cups. It's about taking a step back. Now, the fact that it's come out in the reverse for you is taking a step back a little bit. It's not focusing on what you will lose if you start to think about yourself, because ultimately you can only control yourself, and if other people have a problem with that, then they are going to exit your life, but maybe they're supposed to go, because we do see these cards of moving away from something going on here underneath. Yeah. Take that step back and consider you. Consider your internal space, right? Consider what makes you... I keep coming back to values, and this is really odd. Like I keep coming back to this notion of values, like there's something not sitting right with you. Now I've got twins who are Libras, and I can tell you they've got the most finely honed sense of justice. They've got absolutely no issue dropping each other in the shit if they think the other one has behaved inappropriately, right? At other times they're thick as thieves, but when it comes to what is right, they are always driven by that. And that's kind of how I feel like you are here, but you've almost lost your sense of what's right, or rather you've lost a sense of self within what is right and what is wrong, you know. And it's kind of like, bring it back to you. We've got this here, and I feel like most of you have been getting messages, you know, subconscious messages. Maybe you've been having a lot of, you know, very weird dreams recently. That's possible. Or maybe there are just synchronicities, or maybe you're just getting a feeling of something that you can't really explain, but your subconscious is trying to communicate something to you. Okay. And we've got this Lovers card. Now this is Cancer and this is Gemini respectively, and you might be dealing with those, but you might not. But it's... Whereas the Lovers is about a choice, I'm really struck by the amount of symmetry there in that card. Balance, right? You know what's right for you, and it's about time that you started choosing it, right? Aligning with what sits with your value system, not other, you know, maybe things like blood ties and stuff like that. You know, just because they are a member of your family, it doesn't mean you need to condone how they behave. You know, it's that sort of energy. Really interesting. Right, I'm going to leave it there, Libra. I really hope that it helped. That's always what I set out to do. Nothing more, nothing less. So know that I love you all very, very much, and I will see you soon.